Rabbi Sai, Azoi. So much counting, so much detail. Moshe Rabbeinu has to make a whole din v'cheshbon about all the things which were donated to the Mishkan and all the things they were being used for. Was he really suspected of foul play? He was such a trustworthy person. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says about him, B'chol beisi ne'emanhu. The Medrash Rabbah asks this question and answers that Moshe Rabbeinu had overheard Leitzanim, cynics, noting that he had become very rich. They conclude that he must have been embezzling donations given to the Mishkan. So in order to dispel this Leitzanus, Moshe Rabbeinu made a painstaking calculation about exactly what was given and what it was used for. However, asks Rav Yosef Salant, it doesn't make sense that these scoffers would have just made up some kind of fantasy story, albeit they were wrong, about Moshe Rabbeinu without some kind of grounds in reality to base their story on. So what happened with Moshe that all of a sudden they could make up such a story? My hi. Rav Yehuda Aszod was named after the small town Aszod, which he was born in 1796 near Budapest. He lived during turbulent times in Hungarian Jewry, as there was fierce debates and divisions about how to deal with emancipation. He was orphaned as a youngster, and when he went to learn under the famed Rav of Moravia, the Maram Bennett, he was so poor that he could not afford shoes and became known as the Bocher with the slippers. He eventually became a Dayan and a Rosh Yeshiva in his own right, and also became a very close colleague of the Chassam Sofer. In an always dignified but strong way, he took public stances on behalf of Orthodox Yiddishkeit against emerging reform practices, specifically in the realms of Shmira Shabbos and intermarriage. In 1864, he led a delegation of leading Hungarian rabbis to go and meet Emperor Franz Joseph to protest against the opening of a state-sponsored rabbinic school. That delegation included the Ksav Sofer. On one occasion, the Ksav Sofer sponsored an enormous Suda. What was the reason to celebrate? Well, the Yidden had been granted finally right to their own independent education by the Austro-Hungarian authorities. The occasion was packed with the leading rabbis and dignitaries of Hungarian Jewry, and the climax came when the Ksav Sofer stood up and announced to everyone gathered, Rabbi Sai, I've got something very special to show you. And he took out of his pocket a small object wrapped in silk. And it was a coin, but not a normal coin. This, he told them, is a machzis hashekel. It was passed down to me after generations and generations of my family. An original machzis hashekel from the time of the Beis HaMikdash. I don't think another one like this exists anywhere else in the world. The guests were amazed and excited. They started passing the coin around from one to another, fascinated to see the dimensions, the weight, and the look of this precious artifact. But after some minutes, the mood suddenly changed. The coin had gone missing. Tense silence. Ksav Sofer stood up and he said, I don't suspect anyone here of wrongdoing, but maybe there's been some confusion and by mistake someone put my coin in their pockets. So maybe we can all stand here and empty out our pockets and wallets in front of one another. The esteemed guests all agreed. The suggestion made sense, with the exception of one man, Rav Yehuda Aszod, who was present at the Su'udah. He said, please, let's wait 15 minutes before we do this, and perhaps the coin will turn up. In deference to the great Rav Aszod, the Ksav Sofer agreed. 15 minutes passed, still the coin hadn't turned up. And the Ksav Sofer repeated once again his request that everyone empty out their pockets and wallets. But once again, to everyone's bemusement, Rav Aszod asked for another 15-minute delay, because maybe the coin would turn up. The Ksav Sofer, remembering the great esteem that his father had held Rav Aszod in, once again, this time very reluctantly agreed. More minutes passed. As Rav Aszod was seen, quietly uttering words of desperate tefillah in the corner of the room, the Ksav Sofer Shamash burst in celebration. I found the coin. He'd located it in the garbage, having mistakenly thrown it away when clearing up the tablecloths between courses. But still, the mystery remained. Why had Rav Aszod asked twice for this 15-minute time delay? So he got up and explained to the guests, I actually bought my own machzis hashekel, which I own, an original one to the Suda, and I kept it in my pocket, and I was also going to show it to everyone. But then when I saw that the Ksav Sofer was so delighted with his coin and thought it to be so unique, so I thought if I take my own coin out of my pocket, that's going to reduce his happiness. So therefore I kept it there. But then when his coin went missing, if I'd agreed to have my pockets emptied out, I doubt that any of you would have believed my storyline that actually the coin, which is identical to his, belonged to me. And that would have caused a very big chilul Hashem. So I twice asked for a delay, davening to Hashem that in the merit of the great Chassam Sofer, his son's coin, somehow or other, would be found, and my tefillahs were answered. The Ksav Sofer relieved and delighted, and he said, I now understand why we organized such an enormous su'udah, for us to see the great imperative being done chavschus. Even if all indications point towards a person's guilt, we still have to presume he's innocent until proven otherwise. Back to our question on the Medrash, what grounds did the cynics have to start suspecting Moshe Rabbeinu? Rav Yosef Salant answers by quoting a Chazal that Moshe Rabbeinu missed out on Bizas Mitzrayim and Bizas Hayam. He was busy being Isaac with other mitzvahs, but not wanting him to be impoverished, HaKadosh Baruch Hu granted him wealth through the psoiles of the luchos which had been broken. That gift was granted to Moshe Rabbeinu just before he came down from Har Sinai for the final time, which according to many Meforshim was the very time they started to build the Mishkan and take in the donations. It was at that point that Moshe Rabbeinu therefore became rich, and that's what the late Tzanei Hador chapped onto with their accusation he embezzled money for himself. Those cynics failed to even attempt to be done the chavschus. But the lesson of the lost Machzis HaShekel is to do everything we can to judge people favorably, especially, but not only, the likes of the great Rav Yehuda Aszod, who himself had done so much to advocate during his life for the MS. A good Shabbos.